Since 2001, the board has annually bestowed the distinguished Haagen-Smit Clean Air Awards to extraordinary individuals in recognition of significant career accomplishments in air quality and climate change. To commemorate 5 decades of progress toward clean air, and in conjunction with the board's 50th anniversary, it's a privilege to present today these Haagen-Smit 50th Anniversary Legacy Awards. As we've all just heard, air quality in California has come a long way. Over the last 50 years, many major milestones have been realized, ranging from the Clean Air Act to groundbreaking California and federal efforts to tackle climate change to the scientific breakthroughs that support these policy efforts. And each of this year's winners' career accomplishments are emblematic of the progress we've achieved. Although this year's awards focus on the particular winner's contributions in a particular decade, their legacies actually span career-long achievements. It's somewhat of an artificial construct that we came up with, I have to admit, but it seemed like a good way to recognize 5 really critical people. And certainly all of their achievements are much greater than any one individual contribution, as was the spirit of our namesake, Dr. Haagen-Smit. The awards are named for Arie Haagen-Smit because of his important contributions to air pollution science and also the significance of his career as CARB's first chair. Arie Haagen-Smit, a native of the Netherlands, was a biochemistry professor at Caltech in Pasadena for 16 years, studying natural products like rubber and pineapples. In 1948, he embarked on air pollution research when he was asked by the County of Los Angeles to investigate exactly what was in that stuff that we now call smog. It was his research which found that most of California's smog resulted from photochemistry, when exhaust from motor vehicles and industrial facilities react with sunlight to create ozone. This breakthrough provided the scientific foundation for the development of California's and the nation's air pollution control programs. Leaving his plant studies behind, he continued working in the field of air pollution research and control and took on the smog problem in Los Angeles head on. He became CARB's first chairman in 1968, and in 1973, in recognition of his contributions, he received the National Medal of Science, this country's highest scientific honor. He passed away in 1977, but his legacy lives on, as does his name, in the naming of our laboratory in El Monte. Over the last 17 years, 54 people have received this award for their contributions to clean air, and I am very pleased to be able to continue in that great tradition. So, Mr. Corey, do you want to get this started?
Yes. Thanks, Chair Nichols. Each of the winners will be introduced by a board member. After their introduction, the winner will come to the podium to say a few words. I'll hand them their award and take a quick photo. We'll also take a group photo with the board at the end of the presentations. The first recipient is David Hawkins for his leadership on national science-based clean air policies. He'll be introduced by board member Barbara Reardon.
Our first decade of work as the California Air Resources Board couldn't have been as successful without the hard work of David Hawkins, advocating for a national program to protect American citizens from air pollution. Today, we recognize David Hawkins for his leadership in the development, advocacy, and implementation of sustainable and science-based clean air policies, notably the Clean Air Act, which improved the quality of life and has prevented more than 1 million premature deaths over the past several decades. Mr. Hawkins was one of the Natural Resources Defense Council's first staff members in 1971 and has been with the organization ever since, minus 4 years during the Carter administration, where he served in the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. At U.S. EPA, Mr. Hawkins was responsible for initiating major new programs under the 1977 Clean Air Act amendments. Upon his return to NRDC, he continued shaping the Clean Air Act into the legislation that it is today, one of the most effective laws in U.S. history for protecting public health. With expertise in advanced coal technologies and carbon dioxide capture and storage, Mr. Hawkins has worked with Congress, the executive branch, and the business community to design policies that will slow, stop, and reduce the emissions of global warming pollution. When the opponents argued that the environmental protection was too expensive and the obstacles insurmountable, Mr. Hawkins worked with industry and the government to identify steps we can take. And he argued that the immensity of the challenge is a reason to act now, not to wait. When opponents argued that action for clean air was too extreme, Mr. Hawkins stood up against the relaxation of air quality standards and inaction, stating that what was extreme is how long the public is being asked to wait for clean air. His legacy of advocating for health protective air quality policy will have a positive effect on Americans' health for years to come. The California Air Resources Board is honored to bestow David Hawkins with a Haagen-Smit Legacy Award. And I would like to ask Mr. Hawkins now to step forward to say a few words and receive his award from Richard Corey.
Thank you so very much for this event today. 50 years ago, in 1968, I was teaching math in New York City. I had 2 years of law school under my belt and no idea what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And then I heard about a brave man in California who was working to clean up the air in Los Angeles. And I read up on this brave man, and I followed his work, and a year later, I knew what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. In 1970, I filed my first anti-air pollution lawsuit a few months after graduating from law school. The next big event was that I was lucky enough to meet two people who are here today, Mary Nichols and Mike Walsh. And then a couple of years later, I was lucky enough to meet another mentor who's here today, Henry Waxman. It's been one of the great joys of my life to work with these good friends and fine people and witness all that they've accomplished in the last 50 years. You know, history books are full of stories of great military victories, but the battle against clean air has delivered one of the great victories of our democracy. Thanks to all of your work, we've prevented hundreds of thousands of premature deaths, and we've given the gift of a healthier life to millions of more people. This is a wonderful thing that you've accomplished. I'm grateful for the chance to have worked on this cause, and I'm hard at work on the current chapter, which is pressing for a serious program to address the scourge of climate disruption. It's an honor to have worked with so many committed people on this effort and to receive this award today. And I'm thinking that all of this group needs perhaps a punchier name to attract even more recruits to this ongoing battle. So in closing, let me say that I am proud to be an active member of Dr. Arie's Healthy Hearts Club band. Thank you.
The next recipient is Congressman Henry Waxman for his leadership and many, many legislative achievements on environmental issues. He'll be introduced by Board Member Hector De La Torre.
Thank you, Richard. The Honorable Henry Waxman is being recognized for his environmental leadership while serving 20 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives. Henry is a lifelong pathfinder, going all the way back to Fremont High School in South LA, and has been interested in smoke, just like his fellow pathfinder, Dr. Dre. You can see the details of his accomplishments in the program, but he was an absolute master of what I call the righteous fight. In fact, he wrote the book on it, The Waxman Report, How Congress Really Works. His roots in the California environment run deep. His uncle served on the Los Angeles County Smoke and Fumes Board in the 1940s. While in Congress, he was one of the primary authors of the 1990 Clean Air Act amendments, only the second ever reauthorization of that landmark federal law. 10 years in the making, he first had to beat back a bill proposed by President Reagan and supported by many fellow Democrats in the early 1980s. After that, he and like-minded colleagues needed to strengthen the proposal to address urban smog, toxic air pollution, acid rain, and the depletion of the stratospheric ozone layer, which paved the way for regulation of greenhouse gas emissions. This version passed in 1990 by an overwhelming bipartisan margin. That really happened, which was signed by Republican President George H.W. Bush. That really happened. This is how stuff happened a mere 28 years ago. I reached out to some of Henry's former colleagues to get their perspective because they worked with him day to day. And from Rick Lehman of Fresno, a colleague in Congress in the 80s and 90s, quote, Henry was an unusual politician in that he always used facts and not power as his principal weapon. And no one knew the facts better than Henry. He tackled the most powerful special interests in America, big pharma, big tobacco, fossil fuel oligarchs, and unmasked the hypocrisy in his adversaries by simply telling the truth. In winning passage of the Clean Air Act, he not only tackled a multitude of the most powerful industries in America, but he had to overcome the opposition of powerful individuals in his own party, including the chairman of the policy committee on which he served as a subcommittee chairman, Old Bull John Dingell from General Motors, Michigan. He was fearless. Every American can thank Henry Waxman every time they take a breath, close quote. Subsequently, he introduced the first bill in Congress to stabilize the climate in 1992. Later, he put together the American Clean Energy and Security Act of 2009, also known as the Waxman-Markey Bill. The Waxman-Markey Bill did not become law, but it served as a catalyst for the Obama administration to pursue greenhouse gas reductions. During this time, I was asked by a Midwestern governor if I could help him connect with Henry so that he could lobby him on the Waxman-Markey Bill. What was fascinating about that whole process and conversation, and Henry will remember their subsequent meetings, and I don't want to characterize that, was the reverential way in which this governor asked to speak to Henry. It was an understanding of what a powerful legislator Henry was. It was almost fear that this governor of a state had of Henry, of wanting to kind of take him on. He was not in favor of the Waxman-Markey Bill, by the way. So it was a really telling moment to me about what Henry did in Washington and what it meant. His pursuit of climate solutions led to the creation in 2013 of the Safe Climate Caucus in the House and the bicameral Task Force on Climate with the Senate. Today, there are more than 50 congressional members in the bipartisan Climate Change Caucus. From Alan Lowenthal of Long Beach, a colleague in Congress in his last term, quote, "He was a force that never stopped educating our caucus and Congress on climate change. He was committed to breaking through the denial that surrounded climate change at the time." Well, not really at the time. When he created the Safe Climate Caucus to get Congress to act on climate change, Henry led the fight with the strategy of having members speak out to multiply our voices and build momentum. And Alan shared what one liberal and one conservative said about Henry. Ralph Nader said, "Henry Waxman is the only argument against term limits." And Senator Alan Simpson said, "Henry Waxman is tougher than a boiled owl." Alan closed by saying what an honor it has been to follow Henry in the fight for climate as chair of the bipartisan Safe Climate Caucus. And we cannot forget that he impacted California in myriad other ways throughout his tenure. For example, as a legislator, I reached out to him regarding the Schwarzenegger administration shortchanging California's federal Medicaid waiver worth billions of dollars. And Henry gave me insights on other states' more robust requests that I was able to use to call them out and insist on a stronger request from Washington. Later, in wanting to create a first ever oversight committee in the state assembly, I reached out to Henry for his experience as chair of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. In fact, the California Assembly's Committee on Accountability and Administrative Review fairly plagiarized the bylaws of Henry's committee. The California Air Resources Board is honored to bestow Representative Henry Waxman with a Haagen-Smit Legacy Award, and I am proud to invite Henry, an OG Pathfinder, up to share his thoughts with us on his day.
Thank you very much, Hector De La Torre, for that very kind introduction. We've known each other for many decades. When you were in the State Assembly, we worked together on health issues, and we've also shared the passion about these environmental issues as well. Around this time of year, a lot of people get very interested about awards. Some think that the Academy Awards are the things to watch. Now, I will never get an Academy Award, but Arnold will probably get one in addition to the award we're receiving today at some point in his career. But I was interested in this award, and I'm so pleased to receive the award on behalf of the California Air Resources Board about efforts to help people avoid all the illnesses, diseases, and shortened life because of air pollution, and to save our planet, the only atmosphere we share in the world, from the consequences of carbon emissions. Now, CARB is an interesting acronym for this California Air Resources Board, but did you know there are a lot of people who are trying to get others to follow a low-carb diet? I find that astonishing. We live in a time when a lot of people throw up their hands about government. They think government can't do anything. They're so disappointed for a lot of good reasons. And right now, it seems worse than any of us have ever known before. But I would ask people to take a look at another point of view. I think there are some things that government can and must do to help the American people. And the best example is protecting us from environmental dangers. When I went to the Congress, I started working on the Clean Air Act immediately, mainly because it was a health issue. I was chairman within a term or two of the Health and Environment Subcommittee, environmental issues related to health. It wasn't until many years after that that I learned that my uncle had been involved in this fight. I was born in LA, lived my whole life in LA. My uncle Al Waxman was nominated and served on the first committee set up to fight air pollution. It was the LA County Board of Supervisors Commission Against Smoke and Fumes. And he went on that commission and he said, you know, a lot of the problem is not just the incinerators, which they closed down, but it's a lot of the industry pollution from the automobile and some of the stationary sources, although I don't think he knew the word stationary sources. And so as a consequence, he was thrown off that committee. Well, I found that out and was very proud of that heritage and the family. But I'm very proud of the fact that when I was in Congress arguing for a stronger clean air law, for efforts to deal with the acid rain problem, to do something about the upper ozone layer and its deterioration and the consequences of that, or to take on acid rain pollution through the first cap and trade program that we've ever had, which succeeded so well, or the fight to reduce the carbon emissions that are causing greenhouse gases and all of its consequences, the full extent we don't yet know, but we're starting to experience day after day. I had the opportunity to say to my colleagues, I know the industry people say you can't do this. It'll cost jobs, it'll hurt the economy. We just can't possibly do it. We can't achieve it. It's impossible. But then I was able to turn around to them and say, you know what? In California, they're already meeting those standards. The auto industry has reduced its pollution because of California's advanced activities to reduce the emissions from the mobile source pollutions. And over again, I could cite California. We didn't know the term, but yes, we can attitude toward reducing air pollution. I'm pleased to have been in this fight with you. No one stands out more in my mind than Mary Nichols. I had the pleasure and honor of presenting her an award in Washington, and I cited all the things that she had done in her career here in California. And a lot of people forgot she was also involved in these issues at the federal level. So, Mary, any board that you chair that's accomplished as much as this board and you have done, I am proud to know all of you and to be honored by you. And I proudly accept, until I get an Academy Award, the Haagen-Smit Legacy Award. Thank you so much.
The next recipient is Professor Mario Molina for his influential scientific breakthroughs on climate pollutants. He'll be introduced by board member Diane Takvorian.
Thank you, Richard. Dr. Mario Molina is being recognized today for his groundbreaking research on atmospheric science. In 1974, along with Dr. Sherwood Rowland, he predicted that widely used industrial gases known as chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, could weaken the ozone layer that protects us from deadly ultraviolet rays. Since CFCs are non-toxic, non-flammable, and really stable, nobody thought twice about using them. That is, until Dr. Molina dug into the long-term fate of CFCs as a way to learn atmospheric chemistry. Over time, his research team identified the details of how CFCs led to the creation of the ozone hole. For his work, he was co-awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1995. He donated 2/3 of his share of the prize money to set up fellowships to help scientists from developing countries conduct research in environmental sciences. Thank you very much for that. Dr. Molina's work has also focused on the science and policy of climate change and air quality problems in urban and regional areas. He has called attention to how air pollution remains a serious health problem in the rapidly growing cities of most developing countries. Through the Centro Mario Molina in Mexico City, he works to find practical, realistic, and in-depth solutions to climate change, air quality, and sustainable development. He aims for the center to be a bridge between the developed and developing nations. The world of atmospheric chemistry and science policy have benefited immensely from his research and insights, his unselfish dedication to the greater public good, and his energy and resolve to push the limits of our collective work to ensure a more livable global environment. Dr. Molina's scientific and outreach leadership were instrumental for the first international treaty to resolve a man-made global environmental problem effectively. The California Air Resources Board is honored to bestow Dr. Mario Molina with Haagen-Smit Legacy Award. Felicidades, Professor, and please, if you will come forward to say a few words and receive your award from Richard Corey. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. I'm indeed deeply honored by this recognition. To me, the name Arie Haagen-Smit means a lot. Let me sort of tell you how this came about. It was 50 years ago, and by the way, congratulations for this 50th anniversary, but it was precisely 50 years ago that I came to California after studying in Mexico, spent a few years in Europe, but I came to get my Ph.D. at UC Berkeley. And that's a decision I never regret. It was probably the best decision I ever took because it was fascinating times. First of all, I learned a lot of science, but see, it was also the student movement time. I remember the blue minis, the police in V formation with the students. Anyhow, I did learn a lot besides science itself, but at that time I was interested in very fundamental science, how chemical reactions take place and so on. Not particularly so in the environment, but shortly thereafter I decided to keep working with my colleague Sherry Rowland at the University of California at Irvine, and there we both decided, he was also a fundamental chemist, we both decided we wanted to do something for society. We wanted to learn something more practical, and we got into atmospheric chemistry. And so we just chose a problem, what would happen to these compounds, these so-called miracle compounds, the CFCs that were floating around that indeed replaced the poisonous compounds like sulfur dioxide, that was used at home refrigerators. And it was quite interesting. We had to learn about the atmosphere, and that's when, of course, we realized that there was a problem with the ozone layer. And ozone, of course, nearby Los Angeles, I became aware that it was very important for air pollution as well. And that's where, of course, Arie Haagen-Smith's name came forward. But I was very proud of being a chemist. Fortunately, the scientific community shares a value, which is we want the benefit of mankind. Science itself doesn't tell us what to do, whether it's good or bad. And as an example, there was another well-known scientist. His name was Thomas Mitchley. He happened to be the one that discovered the CFCs. Okay. And they were indeed miracle chemicals. They did a lot of good for society for a while. He had another discovery. He actually didn't discover the original chemicals, but he was very instrumental with tetraethyl lead. Okay. So he also pushed lead as a very important chemical for society. And interestingly, he passed away never realizing that his two big findings, miracle chemicals, were banned later on by society. But anyhow, I pursued my interest, and with Sherry Rowland, of course, we decided to communicate all these findings to society, and were very successful with the help, of course, of the scientific community and many other friends. We managed to get the Montreal Protocol to work, which is the one international agreement that is successful. It has succeeded. It represents the idea that if we all work together, we can all do it. It works. We can do it. We have a very big challenge now with climate change, but with air quality. I'll just mention briefly that after working and spending many years subsequently after being in California, spent some years as a professor at MIT, and started to work besides the ozone layer on air quality as well. And so we had the opportunity to deal with air quality in Mexico City. I remember because it was supposed to be a multidisciplinary study that a number of faculty we got together and decided to tackle. And we learned from Los Angeles, of course, from Arie Haagen-Smit and so on. So we were able to copy many of the very interesting and very important success stories that had happened earlier in Los Angeles. About a decade or two later, Mexico City was at some point named the most polluted city in the planet. 20 million people in a valley surrounded by mountains. So it's a very big challenge. It was indeed very polluted, but again, about a decade or so, pollution came sharply down. So it's much better now, but we are now working very hard. We want to get the small particles also controlled. Ozone itself has been largely controlled, although we still have a problem. So we have a lot of work to do, and we are still learning from what California has done. Okay, there are many more measures that we need to take. But let me just finish by making one more statement about climate change. I worked a lot with climate change, particularly I was very proud of the sort of things we did in PCAS, the President's Council of Advisors in Science and Technology, with President Obama. We essentially managed, working with him, to get the Paris Accords to work after so many years of fighting. And so it shows us that if we all work together, things can work. We are, as you all know, in particularly difficult times now. What's the image in this planet that the United States has after being a leader in all these issues? Well, that's where I bring California up again. California has shown us it can be done. Look, it's the 5th or 6th largest economy in the planet. The economy is still thriving, and the emissions are not increasing. They are going down. California is showing us it can be done. We just have to work all together, and we can work for this planet. Thank you for your attention.
Now Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger for his leadership on climate and environmental policies. He'll be introduced by Chair Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. I'm sorry for my voice, which has partially disappeared here today, but I am deeply honored and pleased to recognize my former boss, a man who actually needs no introduction, but may not have been awarded in this particular category before. I think this might be his first nomination, at least for an air quality award. We are honoring Governor Schwarzenegger for his environmental legacy as governor of California. He, of course, is also known as a champion athlete and a world-famous actor, successful politician, engaged activist. His career has truly been multifaceted and defies categorization as well as expectations. The same can be said of his environmental accomplishments. In 2006, he signed Assembly Bill 32, California's Global Warming Solutions Act, which was even more groundbreaking than we realized at the time. It put California at the forefront of climate change mitigation and gave CARB the responsibility to find causes and solutions to one of the most important issues of our time. Governor Schwarzenegger also shepherded California's pioneering motor vehicle emission standards through the federal approval process in difficult circumstances, paving the way for substantial reduction implications of both climate changing emissions and the adverse health impacts of vehicle emissions, and he was never afraid to take on the opposition regardless of their party or their size. While Governor Schwarzenegger's policy achievements are impressive, his approach to environmental leadership is also, I think, equally worthy of recognition. For the fact is that he brought a global vision, as well as a respect for science, an openness to innovation, talent for post-partisan collaborative partnership in the service of enlightened policymaking, and these have been an inspiration to many. The California Air Resources Board, he's also a car collector, by the way, and that's also very in keeping, I think, with California and our love of automobiles. So we are honored, Governor Schwarzenegger, to have you with us today to receive the Haagen-Smit Legacy Award. And I hope you'll come forward and say a few words about your legacy for all of us.
Thank you very much, Mary, for the wonderful introduction. It's exactly the way I wrote it. Thank you. This is really fantastic. At first, I want to say congratulations to all of the recipients that are here today, that they've received this great award. So congratulations to all of you. Give them a big hand for the great work that they have done. I love this award because obviously I've gotten many awards. But this one is very meaningful, and I think you pointed it out, because it comes, first of all, from you. It comes from the Air Resources Board. It has the name Haagen-Smit. I mean, it's like, what a genius he was. I mean, to be one of the first, if not the first, to really talk about smog and what is smog all about and how deadly it can be. And he was one of the greatest scientists, really breakthrough stuff. And so he's one of those great immigrants that has contributed a lot to this country and to the world. And on top of it, I just thank the world of it that Ronald Reagan was smart enough to appoint him, not to look at party, we don't even know what party affiliation he had, but to just appoint the top person in the world to the position of leading the Air Resources Board. So to me, that is also a great part of the story. If you think about it, that was 50 years ago, and now this year we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Air Resources Board. So 50 years ago, Governor Ronald Reagan appointed him to be the chair of the Air Resources Board. I mean, Haagen-Smit was the man. Now, 50 years later, you have Trump appointing Pruitt to the EPA. What happened? What happened? This is so sad. But this is why I'm so proud of this award, because this man was a brilliant, brilliant man. And I just want to say also that the Air Resources Board has done such an extraordinary job in these last 50 years. It's really unbelievable. And of course, I want to say thank you very much to you, Mary, for doing such an extraordinary job. Because we have done really great work when I was governor. And with the help, of course, of Senator Parfley, who is here today with us, my partner, who was really the genius behind all of this and wrote the bills, knew all the details. What a great partner she was. We traveled to Washington, we lobbied together and all this. It was really great, where Democrats and Republicans truly worked together to solve those problems. And it was really great to work with her and to come up with great ideas, for instance, the hydrogen highway, or to make a commitment to have 50% of renewables rather than just 15%, or to go and reduce greenhouse gases by 25% by the year 2020 and 85% by the year 2050, and the Green Building Initiative, and the list goes on and on and on. But I have to say that the smartest and the best decision that I've made when it comes to environment was to appoint you and Sandra Berg to be chairing this committee. Because when this position became available, I had to look for the best person in the world. And I looked, and I looked, and there it was right in front of me, the person that was really an expert in cap and trade. You did actually, when they made the agreement under the Bush administration about acid rain, you were the one during the Clinton administration that came in and actually did it, successfully did it. And this is why I said that is the person that we need here to chair this committee. And you came out here, you accepted the job, so thank you very much, because without you, none of this would have happened, because we, governors and legislators, we come and go, and we come and go, and we come and go. But you are dug in here like an Alabama tick. And you do the follow through, because it's one thing to talk about it and to pass laws, but it's a whole different thing to then actually make the action happen and to turn it into reality. And this is what you and the entire board does. I want to congratulate all of you for the great work that you have done. So big hands to all of them for the great work that you have accomplished. And we all know that it was not easy. We all have gone through the battles. I mean, we have seen the moments when the naysayers came out and said this, when you pass those environmental laws, it would send California right down with the economy, jobs would be lost, and the whole state would go in the ocean. And how wrong they were. We even had the federal government fighting us on every step of the way. But we recognized that never, ever to say no and to back off. We pushed and we pushed, and we even went to the Supreme Court, and we won in the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court decided that, yes, greenhouse gases is a pollutant, and yes, we can regulate our own air. So this, we fought and fought. I remember the days, and you remember when all the car manufacturers came to my office, and they said, we're going to bury you. We're going to spend millions and millions of dollars against you, and they tried to scare me. So I told them, I said, we're going to terminate you. And they backed off, and now we have nationally the emission standard, which was really fantastic. So this is the kind of work we have done here. So I just want to say that I'm proud of the work that we have done. We didn't do it just for ourselves, but we did it also as an inspiration for the rest of the world, because now other states are inspired here in the United States, and the whole world is inspired by the great work that has been done. So thank you very much for the great work they've done, and thank you for this great award. Thank you.
Those of you in the front should turn around and look to the back, because we've been joined by quite a few of our staff here who wanted to be here for this part of the program. So there's some vacant seats, but thank you all for coming.
And finally, Gina McCarthy, for her dedication to a suite of national and international environmental policies. She'll be introduced by Board Member Dan Sperling.
Until recently, our work here in California has received strong support from our federal counterparts at the US EPA. Major progress was made on a range of environmental issues, most importantly, climate change. It was made possible by Gina McCarthy. Today, we recognize Ms. McCarthy for her leadership on a broad range of climate policies while serving as administrator of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency from 2013 to 2017. Her tenure as U.S. EPA administrator heralded a paradigm shift in national environmental policy. Expressly linking climate change with global public health, she leaves a long-standing legacy for the nation and the world. Gina McCarthy worked with the United Nations, with the World Health Organization, and a variety of other international groups on pollution and climate efforts, and represented the U.S. on global initiatives to reduce high-risk sources of pollution. Her experience prepared her well to become a professor of practice of public health at Harvard University and director of Harvard's Center for Health and the Global Environment. In these roles, she will lead initiatives in climate science, health, and sustainability. Many of us were honored to hear Gina's insights at the recent celebration of CARB's 50th anniversary at UC Davis, where she displayed her wit, her wisdom, and I searched for a good word, but her spunk. Mary, who knows her better than me, said, that's exactly the right word. The California Air Resources Board is honored to bestow Gina McCarthy with the Haagen-Smit Legacy Award. Gina couldn't be here today, but she recorded a video for us to share. Please play the video clip.
Hi. Listen, I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you. I really want to thank the board for this tremendous honor. I know that Haagen-Smit was just a role model for all of us who understand how important it is to understand the science. He taught us connections that existed, and we found ways to solve those so that we'd protect public health and our precious natural resources. So this honor really has left me speechless, except as all of you know, I'm never speechless. So it's wonderful to share this honor with such tremendous leaders, my colleagues that I have known for years, that are really my role models and my heroes. So I want to congratulate them, but I also want to recognize that in today, when we're challenged at the federal level without the kind of leadership that we need, it's important for us to do two things. One is to recommit to the science, to make sure that we follow Haagen-Smit's excellent model on how we tackle our problems. We face them, we recognize the science, we make those technical corrections, and we solve our problems as we always do in the United States. So let's celebrate our successes, let's recommit, let's challenge ourselves, not just to solve the problems of the 20th century, but to make sure we set a future for our children that is going to be as healthy and clean and bright and safe as we all want it to be. So again, thank you for this tremendous honor. Congratulations to my hero honorees. I wish I could be there, but I will be with you in spirit. Thanks so much.